All right, let's dive into this new Call of Duty community update. We know you're a bit skeptical about some of the new features, and uh, and rightfully so. Seems like a lot of this stuff should have been there from day one.
Yeah, there's definitely a better late than never vibe going around. And you're right to be cautious. Let's start with the big one, cheating. The Ricochet anti-cheat teams talking about all these new security measures and ban waves and fancy detection systems. Over 136,000 ranked play accounts banned since
Oh,
launch.
whoa, that's a lot. But is it really enough to make us trust the system again? They're finally pushing that kernel-level driver update to Season 02.
Right, which is something many argued should have been there at launch. Launching a competitive game without a serious anti-cheat system in place from the get-go.
Yeah, seems like asking for trouble.
It definitely raises some eyebrows about their priorities and how many players just gave up because of all the cheating early on.
Hmm.
A kernel-level driver from day one could have made a huge difference in how people felt about the game.
So are they just scrambling to catch up now? What about this IP banning thing? Is that actually a good solution or just a desperate attempt?
Well, they talked about IP banning in the update, and it's kind of interesting. They admit it's not perfect because of the potential for collateral damage. Like, what if a whole dorm gets banned because one person's cheating? Not exactly fair, is it? They seem to be focusing more on these new detection systems and ban waves as their main anti-cheat weapons.
Okay, so it's more about reacting than preventing. But how effective can that really be in the long run? Cheaters always find new ways to break the system.
That's the big question, isn't it? We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out in the real world.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on to another problem, child server stability. The update acknowledges the increase in rubber banding, packet loss, server disconnects,
Not exactly ideal in the middle of a ranked play match, right?
especially when we've been begging for better servers since launch. They talk about improvements to server infrastructure, but is that going to be enough? Are they finally taking this seriously?
Well, they claim they found some specific causes and are implementing targeted improvements, focusing on tackling malicious activities that are messing with server stability. Sounds promising.
But let's be honest, we've heard promises about server stability before. Will this time actually be different? What would have been a smarter approach from the beginning? Shouldn't a rack-solid server infrastructure have been a top priority?
You've got a point there. A solid server infrastructure is the backbone of any online game, especially a fast-paced, competitive one like Call of Duty. Maybe they underestimated the load on their servers at launch or just thought other features were more important. Who knows?
Yeah, it just feels like they're always reacting instead of being proactive. All right, let's lighten things up a bit and talk about voice moderation. They're saying they've updated the system, but finding that sweet spot between trash talk and hate speech is always tough. What do you think about their approach?
Well, they're highlighting these human-driven tuning sessions to refine the system, which is a good sign. It suggests they're going for a more nuanced approach, not just relying on algorithms. They also mentioned an upcoming progress report. Hopefully that'll give us more insight into their strategy.
Transparency is key, especially with something as sensitive as voice moderation.
Oh.
Huh. Okay, time for the fun stuff. Black Ops 6 specific updates. There's a lot here, and some of it might directly impact you. New challenge tracker HUD, presets reduced collision with teammates, and wait for it, the return of gunfight. Plus, a small maps mosh pit, perfect for your camo grinding addiction.
Haha, those are some sweet additions, especially for someone who loves those fast-paced close-quarter battles. But what really caught my eye were the weapon balancing updates, bullet penetration adjustments, and visibility improvements. These are fundamental things that should have been solid right out of the gate, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it seems like they're finally listening to some community feedback.
Yeah.
They're fixing that ninja perk exploit and finally squashing that annoying gearhead bug. Only took, what, like 6 months? Better late than never, I guess.
It does make you think, what took so long? These are issues that should have been caught and fixed during testing. Makes you question their priorities during development.
Right. Speaking of things that should have been there from the start, crossplay in ranked play console players can finally disable it. Took them half a year to implement something that many considered crucial for competitive integrity.
Yeah, I think a lot of players are going to be happy about this change. It's a step towards a more level playing field. They say they'll be monitoring the impact closely, which is important. Disabling crossplay might lead to longer wait times, so finding that balance is key.
It's just mind-boggling that this wasn't a launch feature. They also mention other rank play updates like the vote to forfeit feature, rejoin functionality, and new rewards, all things that just make sense for a competitive mode. Again, why the wait?
It's a pattern we're seeing throughout this whole update, isn't it? Stuff that
Yeah.
seems essential is only showing up months after launch. Makes you wonder about their whole development process and whether they're truly listening to the community.
All right, moving on to Warzone. This is where things get a little interesting. They're delaying new content for Season 02. What's the deal with that?
They're talking about going back to basics, focusing on gameplay tuning, quality of life improvements, bug fixes instead of new content. It's a bold move considering how much people crave new stuff in Warzone.
But isn't this what they should have been doing all along? Building a strong foundation before piling on new features? It's great they're focusing on these core aspects now, but shouldn't this have been the priority from the start?
Ideally, yes. But hey, maybe they're learning from their mistakes. Better late than never, as they say. Let's take a closer look at some of the key changes they're making.
All right, so here are some highlights that might interest you. Faster reload speeds across the board, jump shot adjustments, more consistent bullet penetration, and drumroll please the return of the beloved Mountaineer perk.
Bringing back Mountaineer is a smart move. It addresses that frustration people felt with the fall damage changes. It's like they're admitting, hey, we messed up, but we're trying to fix it.
Exactly. What about the equipment changes? They're limiting how body shields work, which I know has been a pain point for a lot of players.
Yeah, it seems like a direct response to exploits and complaints about overpowered mechanics. It's a good sign they're taking gameplay balance seriously.
And let's not forget about the huge list of bug fixes coming in Season 2. They're tackling everything from map exploits on Rebirth Island to weapon glitches to perk inconsistencies. It's a whole laundry list of problems that, frankly, should have been addressed ages ago.
It really shows both their commitment to improving the game and just how many issues have been plaguing it since launch. It's encouraging to see them taking those bug reports seriously, but it's kind of overwhelming too, isn't it?
It's like they're playing catch-up again. Great that they're finally fixing these things, but why did it take so long? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it raises questions about their quality assurance process and their development priorities. Were these bugs just not caught during testing, or were they considered less important than pushing out new content? Hard to say for sure.
It's got to be frustrating for players who've been dealing with these bugs for months. It just adds to that skepticism and the feeling that this update, while welcome, might be a little too late.
I get that feeling. However, let's try to focus on the positive aspects. They're tackling some fundamental issues and introducing features that people have been asking for months. Whether it's a turning point for Call of Duty remains to be seen. The real test is how well they implement these changes and what the long-term impact is.
Well said. Before we move on to some final thoughts, let's take a moment to reflect. We've seen some positive steps, but there's still some skepticism lingering. What are your key takeaways so far?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. While this update shows some promise, it's important to be cautiously optimistic. Actions speak louder than words. We need to see if these changes actually improve the Call of Duty experience in the long run.
Well put. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still more to discuss. When we come back, we'll dive deeper into the potential implications of these changes and what they can mean for the future of Call of Duty. Stay tuned.
So before we jump to this part, we were talking about bug fixes and quality of life improvements, especially in Warzone. I know you're particularly interested in how some of those directly affect you.
Oh, absolutely. Faster reload speeds, the jump shot adjustments, and that more consistent bullet penetration they're promising. Those are all fantastic. But the return of Mountaineer, now that's what I'm talking about. It's like they're finally admitting, hey, maybe we messed up with those fall damage changes.
Bringing back Mountaineer was a pretty smart move. Remember how much you loved that perk? It shows they are actually listening to the community at least a little bit. Sometimes the best features are the ones you bring back, not the new ones you try to invent.
If only it hadn't taken them this long, right? What about the equipment changes? That body shield nerf seems like a big deal.
Yeah, that seems to be a direct response to all the complaints about exploits and those overpowered mechanics. Remember how annoying it was to get killed by some guy basically flying across the map with a body shield? They're trying to bring the focus back to more tactical gameplay, which I think is a good thing.
It's about time. Shouldn't have taken a community outcry for them to fix something that was obviously broken from the start. And then there's that massive list of bug fixes coming in Season 2. Map exploits on Rebirth Island, weapon glitches, perk inconsistencies, you name it.
It is a pretty extensive list. Makes you wonder how they let so many bugs slip through in the first place. It's good they're finally addressing them, but it does point to a bit of a pattern, always reacting instead of being proactive.
It feels like they're constantly playing catch-up. Fixing issues that should have been caught during testing makes you think about their priorities during development. Were they so focused on new content that they didn't make sure the core experience was polished?
It's a good question. Maybe they underestimated how complex Warzone is and how many bugs and exploits could pop up. Or maybe they just thought new features were more important than a stable, balanced game. Whatever the reason, it's led to a lot of frustration.
It seems like they're starting to listen to the community now. But is it too little, too late? Is this a real turning point for Warzone or just another Band-Aid solution?
That's the million-dollar question. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. Do they stick to this back to basics approach and focus on fixing things and improving the quality of life in the game? Or do they go back to prioritizing new content over a polished experience? Only time will tell.
I'm trying to be optimistic, but it's hard not to think they should have been doing this all along. It's like they needed a wake-up call to realize that a stable, balanced, bug-free game is way more important than shiny new content.
I get that. It's been a bit of a roller coaster for Warzone players, and I understand if you're feeling a little jaded. But let's give them a chance. This update shows they're willing to tackle some of those core issues that have been bugging everyone.
Let's hope this is a sign of a more mature approach and that they're truly committed to making a better experience for everyone. Okay, shifting gears a bit here. Let's talk about something a little more visual. They're making changes to improve the visual clarity of the game, right?
That's right. They're tweaking lighting and shadows in some areas to help with visibility. I know a lot of players, especially those who prefer a more tactical approach, have been asking for this.
It's a good change.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've been killed by someone hiding in the shadows. It's so frustrating to die, not because you were outplayed, but because you just couldn't see the enemy. It's almost as they designed the game to be visually confusing sometimes.
It's a tough balance to strike. They want the environment to be immersive and realistic, but not at the expense of gameplay. It sounds like they're making changes to find that sweet spot between looks and functionality.
They should have done that from the beginning. I understand wanting the game to look amazing, but not if it means making the gameplay unfair. What other visual changes are they making?
Well, they're also adjusting the effects for some equipment and kill streaks to make them less distracting and disorienting, so less screen shake and particle effects so you can see what's happening more clearly.
Those are great changes. It's so annoying to get killed because you're blinded by an explosion or can't see through a smoke grenade. It feels cheap, like they're prioritizing flashy visuals over skillful gameplay. Do you think these changes will actually make a difference?
I think they will. Improving visual clarity is subtle but important. It can be the difference between winning and losing a gunfight, especially at higher skill levels. By reducing visual clutter and distractions, they're letting players focus on what really matters, their skill and tactics.
It's a step in the right direction, but it makes you think, why wasn't this done sooner? It's like they're finally realizing the obvious flaws in their design choices.
Hindsight is always 20/20, right? Maybe they were so caught up in creating a visually impressive game that they didn't think about how it would affect the gameplay. Or maybe they just didn't realize how important visual clarity is to the overall experience.
Whatever the reason, it's good to see them making these adjustments. It shows they're paying attention to feedback and trying to improve things. Hopefully they keep this up and prioritize gameplay over everything else.
Definitely. A visually stunning game is great, but it doesn't mean much if the gameplay is frustrating and unbalanced. They need to find that balance between style and substance.
Speaking of substance, let's talk weapon balancing. They're making some pretty big changes to a lot of weapons, aren't they?
That's right. They're adjusting damage values, recoil patterns, and how effective attachments are for a whole bunch of weapons. It seems like they're trying to shake things up a bit and create a more diverse and balanced weapon pool.
And, I love my meta weapons. I'm always a little skeptical when they start messing with weapon balance, but I have to admit, some of these changes look promising. They're nerfing some of the overpowered weapons that have been dominating for months, which is definitely a good thing.
It's important to keep the meta evolving. When certain weapons get too strong, it can make the game stale and boring. It's good that they're trying to address that.
But let's be real, it's a tricky thing to get right. They need to nerf the overpowered weapons without making them completely useless. And they need to buff the underpowered weapons without making them overpowered. It's a tough job, and they don't always get it right.
Absolutely. It's a constant process of tweaking and adjusting. It's never going to be perfect, but it's crucial for keeping the game healthy and competitive.
My biggest fear is that they'll overcorrect and just create a whole new set of problems. We've seen it happen before, right?
Yeah.
Remember when they nerfed that specific weapon name so badly that it became practically unusable?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It shows that even with the best intentions, things can go wrong. Weapon balancing is complex, and they need to gather data, listen to feedback, and make smart adjustments.
Hopefully they've learned from their past mistakes. Speaking of learning from mistakes, let's talk about their communication with the community. They've been pretty quiet lately, haven't they?
They have been quite silent. Being transparent and communicating openly is so important for building trust. Hopefully this update means they're going to be more communicative and responsive from now on.
I'm not getting my hopes up just yet.
Yeah.
They've promised better communication before, and it didn't always happen. Actions speak louder than words, right? They need to show us, not just tell us, that they're listening and care about what we think.
You're right. Regular updates, open conversations, and actually admitting when they make a mistake are so important for a good relationship with the players. Hopefully they get that.
All right, we've covered a lot in this part of the deep dive. Bug fixes, visual improvements, weapon balancing, communication. It's a lot to take in. There are definitely things to be excited about, but I still have that feeling of, I'll believe it when I see it.
And that's understandable. It hasn't been the smoothest ride for Warzone players, so it's normal to be a little cautious when they promise changes. The real test is whether these updates actually make a difference in the long run.
Well said. We'll be back soon to talk about what these changes could mean for the future of Warzone. Stay tuned. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into this Call of Duty update. We've been focusing on all the skepticism surrounding some of these changes and that nagging feeling that a lot of this stuff should have been here all along.
It has been a bit of a journey, right? We've seen some positive steps like the focus on anti-cheat and server stability and those quality of life improvements you're so excited about. But yeah, there's definitely that too little too late feeling lingering around.
It's like they finally decided to clean up the house, but only after letting it get totally trashed. Makes you wonder if they would even bothered without all the pressure from the community.
Hard to say for sure, but I think it's more important to focus on the future now. Where do we go from here? What does this update tell us about what Call of Duty might look like down the road?
That's the big question, isn't it? Are we actually seeing a change in how they approach development? Are they finally starting to prioritize the things that really matter to us, the players? A fair, stable, and most importantly, fun experience.
I think the answer is maybe. This update has potential, but we have to remember that actions speak louder than words. We need to wait and see if these changes actually stick. Will the anti-cheat measures actually work? Will the servers stay stable? Will they actually keep listening to the community?
It's a wait-and-see situation for sure. But I think it's safe to say we're all cautiously optimistic. We want to believe they're changing for the better, but we've been burned before.
Right. We've seen them promise changes before, and then things just go back to the way they were. That's why it's so important for us, the community, to keep holding their feet to the fire.
We need to keep the pressure on there. Keep giving feedback, report those bugs, and never stop demanding the kind of Call of Duty experience we deserve.
Exactly. But let's not forget to celebrate the good stuff, too. This update does fix some problems that have been around for a while, and we should acknowledge that it means they are listening, at least a little bit.
I'm choosing to focus on the positive. For now, I'm excited to jump back in and try out those faster reload speeds, the new weapon balancing, and of course, gunfight. But I'm also going to be watching closely to see how it all plays out in the long run.
And that's the most important thing I want you to take away from this. Get out there, enjoy the new features, but don't let your guard down. Keep pushing for a better Call of Duty. The future of the franchise depends on it.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into all things Call of Duty. Remember, it's up to us, the players, to make sure this game stays on the right track. So keep those voices loud, stay engaged, and as always, stay frosty.
Drizzle tip. Drizzle tip on the mic and the screen. Modern warfare madness, the sickest routine. Team deathmatch loaded, ready to clash. Newbies get nervous, they scatter and dash. Kicking down doors, we own this space. Frag grenade flying, join the chase. Takedown after takedown, feeling so free. Drizzle tip streaming live on your TV. Rolling with precision like a boss on the go. Enemies trembling as the kill counts grow. Headshots landing, bam, 1, 2, 3. Drizzle tip taking out the enemy. Controller in hand, eyes on the prize. You can't hide in the shadows, don't even try. Streaming in life for the world to see. No mercy, no surrender, it's Drizzle tip spree. Kicking down doors, we own this space. Frag grenade fly. chase. Takedown after takedown, feeling so free. Drizzle tips streaming live on your TV. From the rooftop, sniping they never knew. Sneaking up behind them with a silent cue. Team on my back, we're tight on the grind. Victory in sight, legends you'll find. From the rooftop, sniping they never knew. Sneaking up behind them with a silent cue. Team on my back, we're tight on the grind. Victory in sight, legends you'll find. Drizzle tip. Drizzle tip. Drizzle tip. Drizzle tip. Kicking down doors, we own this space. Frag grenade flying, join the chase. Takedown after takedown, feeling so free. Drizzle tips streaming live on your TV. Drizzle tips streaming live on your TV. Drizzle tips streaming live on your TV.